And for the last 13 that these two have met, it's been the Pats. Tied 3-3, 25 ticks. Just flip the field, get it to overtime, see if you can win one. But the third phase, it lurks. Marcus Jones with a block. Sprung free, one to beat. He beats him. Jones, God! With 8 ticks remaining, it crosses the goal line to give the Patriots the 10-3 lead, and that lead would hold. Jones, 84 yards to pay dirt in what would be a late game winner by the Pats, who now have 14 in a row against this Jets team that's been playing with a lot of confidence, especially defensively, but there's a whole lot to figure out on the offense. Zach Wilson, 9 of 22, 77 yards, 26 rushing yards. Not going to do it. As for the other side, Mac Jones looked exceedingly human at times as well. 23 of 27 doesn't tell the full story, nor does the 246, but 10-3 is the final, with your only touchdown between these two coming on an 84-yard punt return with just seconds remaining. Marcus Jones, your hero in Foxborough. All right, digging into the dominance with our guys. What a finish it was between these two teams. I do want to go positive here in a couple ways, Tyler, but let's start with two teams that coming into the day were in the playoff picture. So I'll ask you the question, did either look like a playoff team to you?
No, and I mean, you're talking about a game or a play that was the most exciting maybe of Week 11, and it came in the most boring game on the entire slate. I mean, you're talking about 6 total points up until that point, and neither one of the quarterbacks is really elevating their teams right now. That's the biggest issue for me. You look at both the New York Jets and the New England Patriots, there are pieces on both of the rosters that you can say, all right, there are building blocks. Certainly, Marcus Jones is one of them, it seems like, on the New England side. But right now, both quarterbacks have a huge issue. And whether or not it's a capability, which I think is the question with Zach Wilson, and whether he's able to elevate his team. And the question with Mac Jones is, does he have the pieces around him in terms of the coaching staff for him to succeed, whether it's Matt Patricia and Joe Judge helping him develop in year 2? Those are the massive questions for both of these teams. Clearly, they're well head coached. I do think that Robert Saleh is doing a strong job there. They've made some great additions over the course of the offseason, had a really good draft. It's just the question of, can Zach Wilson be the guy that elevates this team? Everywhere else, they're budding. Everywhere else, you can say that they're a playoff team. But right now, Zach Wilson is the thing that's holding them back from being looked at as a serious playoff contender. Everything else, to me, you can have confidence in, except for the most important position in the sport. And on the other side, you can question all the things that are going wrong with New England, the offensive line, the play calling. Mac Jones has regressed in year 2, and that's the biggest thing that's preventing them from being a legitimate playoff contender in the AFC.
Yeah, I thought today this game would indicate who's going to make the playoffs, and this could potentially cost the New York Jets a playoff game off that punt return or getting into the playoffs. But you look at both offensive lines really struggled. I think Mac Jones was sacked 6 times today. Zach Wilson was sacked 4 times today. Offense, if you were looking for an offensive game plan or a game, this was the most boring game that you watched on Sunday. But for the New England Patriots to come and to get a big play like that to win the game, it's almost like a walk-off home run in the 9th inning. That will probably propel the New England Patriots into the playoffs, and it may keep the New York Jets out of the playoffs.
Yeah, big moment in this season, and it becomes a big moment once again in this rivalry. And Rick, you've been a part of these matchups and these games where things sort of hang in the balance between one team that seems to have another's number, and it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy after 14 in a row go one way. Does it feel like that at times when you're on the wrong sides of these conversations?
Well, when you talk about is this a rivalry, it's not a rivalry unless you can beat your rival at least sometimes, 50% of the time. You haven't beat them in 14 games, so is this really a rivalry? New England figures out a way every time to beat the New York Jets, and until the New York Jets get over that hump, they're going to struggle to make the playoffs because they can't get through the New England Patriots.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at it with Zach Wilson as well. I mean, he's now 0-4 straight up and against the spread against Bill Belichick in his career. So again, as much as they're building things in a really productive way, I think that if you look big picture on the New York Jets, if you took the playoff implications aside, because I don't think if you asked any New York Jet fan going into the 2022 season, hey, listen, this is a playoff team right out of the gate, I think they'd truthfully laugh at you a little bit. But I think what you could realistically ask of this team is, hey, can you show me signs that you're building towards being a consistent playoff contender? And they're showing you that. They have the pieces in place to be a regular playoff contender, and it feels like they're building towards that over the next couple of years. The only thing that's going to stop them right now is their quarterback. Is Zach Wilson going to be able to take the developmental steps necessary for them to legitimately be a threat week in, week out, and year in and year out to go to the postseason? Right now, I don't think that's the case. He struggles really tremendously when he's pressured, and it felt like a lot of times he was sailing the football over his intended receiver's hands. It just felt like he's been a touch off every time he plays the New England Patriots, and I think it's because of that pressure. He's one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL statistically in passer rating when he's under pressure, and you saw that again on Sunday here in Foxborough.
We most certainly did. The question now becomes, do we have a quarterback? Both of these teams might still be looking for an answer. Jones, 246, gets the job done, doesn't get his offense into the end zone. We had to do that in the third phase. Zach Wilson, meanwhile, did not look great. And yeah, he didn't throw a pick, but also didn't get his team to the end zone. That 0-0 is becoming the way for Zach Wilson. Just 77 yards through the air. Your standout here, Ramondre Stevenson, 13 fantasy points, going to be your headliner. Rick Spielman, Tyler Sullivan in the mix here to break down some of what we did see. And let's begin with the Eagles, who just about 10 days ago were this unstoppable force and an immovable object, guys. But here they look human once again, although it does come in a win. Rick, I'll go your way first here. It is a W, and when you're in that situation, do you essentially wipe clean what we just saw and say, hey, 9-1, let's move forward? Or are there things that do need to be addressed here immediately?
Yeah, no, I think that they're playing well. Today, the one thing that I did notice and I wanted to see, when they were down and behind, Jalen Hurts, was he good enough to bring them back on the road against an inspired, I should say, Indianapolis Colts team, and what a job Jeff Saturday's doing. But they've always been, when they were going undefeated, they were always leading or controlling the game. This is the first time that I've seen Jalen Hurts actually on the road in a tough circumstance come back and lead that team to a victory.
Yeah, I'll echo what Rick said just there. It is credit to Jalen Hurts to be able to will his team back on a game where they really had no business of winning against the Indianapolis Colts. As crazy as we may say, they had no business winning against the Jeff Saturday-led Colts, but that's exactly where they were. 3 points going into the fourth quarter, really uninspired football. To me, the biggest issue for this team over the last few weeks, and that includes the loss against Washington, but you can even go back to that Thursday game against the Houston Texans, they seem to be playing down to their competition. They get kind of beat up a little bit in terms of running or stopping the run. You saw it with Jonathan Taylor a little bit today. You've seen it over the last few weeks, whether it's Brian Robinson or you go all the way back to Dameon Pierce. They are getting moved around a little bit on the defensive side of the ball. They need Jordan Davis back on that defensive front. He's somebody that is going to be critical for them in the postseason when he gets back healthy. But like you said, credit to Jalen Hurts for able to get that 14 points in the fourth quarter, score that go-ahead touchdown. To me, that's encouraging when you see the development, the continued development of Hurts. But to me, the bigger picture question about this Philadelphia team is, are they able to extend? Are they able to use what their talent ceiling is and go and beat up against these bad teams? So far, the last few weeks, they kind of play down to that competition.
A win is a win, and they are 9-1 on the season, which is nothing to scoff at here, Tyler. But you mentioned it there. The way you win against lesser teams might tell you something about the road ahead. So with that in mind, what is the message from Nick Sirianni as he tries to get his team to play back to that ceiling that they've already established being a very high one?
Yeah, no, it's just getting back to a better rhythm to start these games. I mean, we've talked about it a bunch. This team was unbelievable in terms of scoring, particularly in the second quarter, but it did take them a little bit longer to kind of get started, even in those games, and it just feels like whatever that magic was in that second quarter, it's kind of fizzled out a little bit. And again, To me, it's stopping the run on the defensive side of the ball, giving your offense as many at-bats as possible to get down the field and get into the end zone. But for me, it's just getting back to their roots. Obviously, running the football, getting everybody healthy. And that's one thing that's a big thing with this offense. This is their first game without Dallas Goedert, who has become a huge piece to this passing attack for Jalen Hurts. They're still figuring themselves out as to what they are at this point. Obviously, A.J. Brown was banged up last week, too. I don't know if he's 100% for this game either. So for me, that's the biggest thing. Get healthy and ultimately try to find that rhythm earlier in games so you can get off to faster starts.
Yeah, and just to follow up with that, they went out and signed Linval Joseph. They went out and signed Adonam Suh to try to shore up that defense until Davis comes back. But when Philadelphia is the deadliest is when they can get that big lead and then let them pass rushers go after the opposing quarterback and then game over. But they have to solidify the run defense. They tried to do that with the 2 signings this week to hopefully put a little Band-Aid over that defensive front versus the run until they can get to Jordan Davis back.
All right, we got plenty of other action to bring your way here as they're coming fast and furious. We'll have all the highlights here throughout the hour as we take a look at the fantasy performers here out of this less than stellar Eagles performance, but 9-1 is 9-1.